Bob, welcome to BetMGM Tonight. Straight away from me, hearts in the fantasy football community are beating rapidly for Travion Henderson. He booked a standout camp in preseason, making electric play after electric play. What do you expect the RB split between him and Ramondre Stevenson will be in week one? And let me ask you this. How long will that split be, and will it sustain until, like, say, week 10? Your thoughts on Travion Henderson?
Well, I chuckle a little bit, and it's good to be with you guys because Josh McDaniels is back as the Patriots offensive coordinator. And thinking back to Josh's tenure with Bill Belichick, when the Patriots had multiple backs in their running back room, it was liable to be any one of three or four guys, depending on who the opponent was, what the game plan was, who was likely to get the bulk of the work that particular week. Now, you're absolutely right. I mean, Travion Henderson has been arguably the Patriots' best player thus far through the preseason and training camp. And certainly it appears as though he has potential to be, I should say, their most explosive offensive player right now. But I think a couple of things for me that lead me to hesitate to tell anybody to draft him high in fantasy football or to bet on him big if you're a gambling sort is, number one, as I mentioned, Josh McDaniels' track record. I think as well with Henderson at Ohio State, when he did have the workload heavier than at other times, there were injury issues. And I think last year, of course, with a back sharing time, who's now in the NFL as well, and an outstanding player in his own right at Ohio State, I think you had an indication of how he was most effective. Now, I think for the Patriots, they're going to use him as a kick returner as well as a back. And the thought initially when the Patriots drafted him in the second round here locally was that this is a guy that probably would figure as a third down back per se, similar to Shane Vereen and James White. But he's much more than that. I mean, he's actually surprised the Pats in some respects. Elliot Wolf, the vice president of player personnel, said a couple of weeks ago that one of the things that surprised him about Travion Henderson is how well he's run between the tackles. But I still think that knowing Josh the way he's operated in the past, and also because Ramondre Stevenson, despite ball security issues, he's had fumbling problems last year and earlier in his career. He's a guy who's put up some very good numbers for McDaniels in the past, 1,000-yard season, 60-plus catches several years ago. And then on top of that, you have Antonio Gibson, who's a guy I think is a kind of an under-the-radar threat for this team this year as both a runner and a pass catcher out of the backfield. And I think you're going to see a lot of sets for the Patriots with two backs. And he may be a guy who catches some balls in the red zone that otherwise would go to Henderson or Stevenson. So I don't mean to rain on the Travion Henderson prayer. I think he's going to be an outstanding player if he's healthy. But I do hesitate to encourage anybody to bank on him when it comes to fantasy football consistently week in, week out.
Bob, you brought up Josh McDaniels, who takes back over as play caller. What does that mean for Drake Maye year two? Year one, his rookie season, threw for over 2,000 yards in limited action, 15 touchdowns. I think he's going to use his legs. If you go back to the season with Cam Newton, that wasn't prime Cam Newton, and he still rushed for double-digit touchdowns. Is that kind of the offense you think that we're going to see with Drake? And what are your expectations, for him year two in the McDaniels offense?
Well, I certainly think Josh is going to try to utilize his legs, certainly more than last year in a designed way. When Drake ran last year, it was always unscripted. There were very few design runs until maybe the last start or two. Alex Van Pelt was very conservative in terms of his usage of Drake in the running game. He did have a concussion early in his experience with the Patriots, and then a second near concussion that got hit and got pulled off the field by the spotter. So, there was a lot of caution that was exercised with him, and especially given the state of the team. I think Josh will incorporate RPOs and design quarterback runs. I think he'll have him on the move with design rollouts, moving the pocket a bit. But I think what we've seen thus far during training camp and preseason is that it's, for the most part, the Josh McDaniels offense that he ran with Tom Brady, that he ran with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think with Drake Maye, you'll see, as I mentioned, some of those run concepts. But he's really taken to this offense very well in the pocket. I think you'll see the ball come out a lot. I think Josh's going to try to get rid of the ball out of his hand. He's still working on a couple of things related to his movement. Mike Vrabel's been very adamant from day one, remain a passer. When you're moving out of the pocket, remain a passer. And there's been evidence of Drake really taking to that concept and looking downfield to throw before automatically tucking and running, which I think a lot of young quarterbacks are prone to do. The other part of that, though, is also got to protect yourself. And going back to the second preseason game, he moved out of the pocket, and he did throw the ball away at one point under pressure, but he held on to it a lot longer than he should have, and he took an unnecessary hit. So I think you're going to see a blend. I think they're going to be aggressive with him at times, but overall, I think that they want to make sure that he is protected and he protects himself, and he's a passer first who can make plays with his legs. But, he has to have that threat too against opposing defenses. I think, with Josh McDaniels and Drake Maye, the receiver room is better than it was. It's just still not where it has to be for this team long term. They got a couple of tight ends who've been reliable players for them in Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. And with those backs, and I think that's a real big area for Drake Maye in year two, passing to those backs. And maybe this is where Travion Henderson really has an opportunity to become, a point getter, if you will. I think Josh is going to use those guys quite a bit for Drake. Make him get rid of the ball early, have a lot of easy completions. Pop Douglas is taking over that slot position. Efton Chisholm is a guy who's made this team as an undrafted free agent. Very exciting player during training camp and preseason. So I think you're going to see a lot of short, quick throws, and they'll look to air it out when they can. But for the most part, he wants to get that ball out of Drake's hand.
Bob, a lot of people are fascinated by the Patriots' win total because last year they win 4 games. It was a rebuild year. Now the win total in Vegas is 8.5. So that's a big jump. Usually you don't see that. Do you think, that's too high of expectations year 2 for Drake Maye, year 1 now for Mike Vrabel as head coach of the Patriots? Or you think this team should, compete for a playoff spot and win 9 to 10 games?
Well, I'm usually known in these parts as a glass is more than a half full kind of guy, even when the glass might be a quarter full. Especially at our station, 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. I have to say though that I think the expectations, and I understand why. I mean, there's no question about it. This team is being coached better than it's been coached in the last couple of years. I think it was noticeable, a big difference in training camp, and going back to the spring, the cohesiveness of the coaching staff, the energy, the efficiency. Vrabel has that track record, of course, from his tenure in Tennessee. I think there's a real vision for what he and his staff are doing right now. And they've brought in better players through free agency. A lot of people are very high on their draft class, and I haven't seen anything to date that sways my opinion about the potential for that draft class. I think we've talked about Henderson. There's some other guys who are rookies that have a real opportunity, I think, in the next couple of years to do a lot more than recent Patriots draft classes. You look at the number of close games they played. The last couple of years, they lost a bunch of games that in one way or another, whether it was an early miss or late miss, and it could have changed with a converted field goal or mistakes that were made that were unforced. And I think one of the things Vrabel and his staff have looked to do, and they did it in Tennessee early in his tenure there, and thus far we've seen it, in evidence in training camp and the preseason games, is clean up a lot of the mistakes, the bad football, the things that get you beat. The old saying when Belichick took over, when Chuck Noll coached the Steelers, before you learn how to win, you got to learn how to not have to lose. And I think Vrabel's really put an emphasis on that. So this team's going to be better on the margins, and that should lead, because of the number of close games they've had in recent years that have gone the other way because of their mistakes, it should lead to a few more wins. And I think a lot of people look at the schedule and the quarterbacks they face this year and think that bodes well for them. I do caution people, however, that there are depth issues on this team, even in areas where they have seemingly improved, as we saw last week in the preseason finale. And I think you're probably going to see in the next 24 hours or so as changes are made to that 53-man roster as players become available to them. I think that there's concerns about the depth. I think the defense potentially has a great opportunity to be a strength that carries this team for a bit. Because of the two cornerbacks Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, and a defensive line that includes Milton Williams next to Christian Barmore. But then again, Gonzalez hasn't been on the field since the early days of training camp, and Davis has been a guy with a lot of injury problems and only recently came back to the lineup. And then offensively, their offensive line is a work in progress. It should be better, but there are still significant questions about the starting five up front in front of May, which was so problematic for them, not just last year, but really even the preceding couple of years.
We're talking to Bob Socci, the voice of the New England Patriots, breaking things down about this franchise. Could be ascending, to say the least, based on that 8.5 win total available right now at BetMGM. Bob, coming off the ACL setback and Cardi B boat parties this offseason, how was Stefon Diggs looked in the lead up to the opener? Are you confident he's going to reach 1,000 yards this season, assuming he stays upright?
Well, it's a big number, especially, looks like at his age, while he's moving very, very well, and I want to preface the comment I'm about to make with just how amazing it's been that he was actually able to get out there even after the boat video that went viral. He was able to get out there and practice and move around remarkably well for a guy, less than a year removed from surgery to repair a torn ACL. And he has looked very good in terms of his quickness, short area quickness. His route running is phenomenal. The polish. He gives the Patriots something, frankly, they haven't had in a long while. Certainly in my time, in a guy that has the production he's had, the reputation he has, and as well that flair. I mean, the Pats have had some really good receivers in my time in Edelman and Amendola. Diggs a different kind of receiver in a lot of respects over the course of his career. But I think there are real questions about like what he can do in terms of big plays, chunk plays, whether he's going to be more of a stick mover for this team when he does get out there. I think another question, for them and for him is, again with McDaniel's offense and Drake. I don't think Drake Maye can look to force feed Stefon Diggs. And there are some questions, Diggs raised them himself, about, what his expectations are for week one. He did that with Diana Rossini while the Patriots were having joint practices in Minnesota. He hasn't played in the preseason. He didn't play in the preseason games. He really didn't compete a whole lot in the competitive drills during the joint practices that the Patriots had, and they had 3 of them, 1 with Washington, 2 with Minnesota. So, when he does get out there and gets hit for the first time and gets into live game action, we'll see. Having said all that, he was on pace last year when he got hurt for, close to another 100-catch, 1,000-yard season. He was right in that ballpark with the Houston Texans, and he became a different receiver. Now, part of that could be that he also was playing with Nico Collins and, Tank Dell, and with the Patriots right now, they're looking for him, frankly, to be the guy, the number one guy for them. Maybe not the number one pass catcher when it comes to receptions total. That could be Pop Douglas out of the slot. But I think, right now you look at in that room, leader in the room, reputation, try to set coverage. I mean, Stefon Diggs is still, Stefon Diggs. Still a guy who's had all those 1,000-yard seasons and has the reputation that he's had. But I think there are still some questions about him over the course of this coming season, and really they begin with week one.